fashion figure. Oval, nice and big, more prominent features than the female. Can I move this a smidge over? There we are. Divide and divide. And remember, this is your initial sketch. So there is no worry as far as is it exactly divided? Because this is what we are building on. Okay, so our eye is going to have a frown, but it's much more angled than the female, and it's wider. The top of our eye is not going to be at the same place as the bottom. So the bottom is a little bit shorter. Don't bring it all the way to the center and to the edge. So start that bottom line. It's diagonal and start it inward so that the top stands out. All right, going ahead and put in that C shape and fill in everything except the center, little bit of light in the middle. That'll be our reflection. So right about there, and then finish off that bottom. Same thing here. These are little circles, and we are just simply filling in top, bottom, left, right, leaving the light reflection at the center. Okay, so now let's just darken the top of that eye a little bit. It's not mascara though. So it's a frown on the top just to darken it to set the eye in the socket. Now we'll do our angled for the lid. So the lid is closer to the eye and more angled than you might see for the female. I think I'll lift this one up on the left a little higher. So maybe like that. So it's not as wide as the entire eye. And darken that back. All right, so then now that we have our eye in place there, let's go on ahead and block out a nice thick brow, and it's closer and thicker. So closer to the eye, and you're drawing it much more angled than you do for the female. And it's thicker than that female. So we're just gonna darken that in. So that's the basics there. I would now say let's go on ahead and block in our mouth. So we have a nice angle, skip a space and do the other angle. Okay, and then here we're going to have a very soft angle and then a tiny bit of a smile, but it's flat mostly. It just smiles a tiny bit. So now here in the center, we're going to have much more pronounced U shape, and then frown over on top. And same thing here, frown over, and when you get to the edges, curl up just the tiniest bit. So not a whole lot, but a tiny little bit. Now we'll do that same very pronounced U shape right underneath. Then you're going to frown over and frown over. And now we can build the bottom of our lip. Now let's do our nose. So our nose is going to have much more prominent features than the female as well. So we'll start off with the U, and then now we're frowning over, but then we're going to connect it slightly back. So we have that little hook. Frown over, bring that back. So now going ahead and put that C shape. I'm going to put it right there on the right. Just going to move that a little bit to the inside version. And a C shape here in this case is going to be much more pronounced than the female. Now here we are diagonally finishing that off, aiming toward the inside, and then we're going to go upward. So we're going to do much more definition. Here we have our curve on the right, and we also will have a curve on the left. It's just a little bit less defined. Now we're going to go on ahead and come out towards the left and towards the right a tiny little bit. Then we're coming back in. So that's giving this male a much more defined nose. And now that we've done that, Let's go on ahead and decide at the side of the face, how wide is this face going to be? And then our chin. So the men typically have a much more prominent chin, so it's a little further away for a man than it would be for the female. So now we've done that. And now we're going to go on ahead and slightly curve just right at the outer edges of where we already defined. And then now we're coming down fairly straight to that mouth line. So we're coming down. There's just a little slight curve, very subtle. Okay, and now we want to come diagonal, diagonal, and then we're going to connect the chin up. So our male face is much more defined. We are going to turn the neck slightly, and it's wide for the neck. I would say that's too wide. Let's make it more like, there we go. So we've turned the neck. So it's not long and slim, but it's long and wide. There we go. And then here we're coming diagonally out and straight. Okay, so now we have a nice long neck, strong features here. Let's do a little bit of above the head. So that literally goes slightly outward. This aims toward the right, this one aims toward the left. And then now let's deal with our hairline. So it's above the hairline for us because the men tend to have more prominent forehead. And then now we're going to come diagonal towards a frown. So slightly downward. And then now we're going to come slightly inward. And then we're headed back out. So that's the basic shape that we're dealing with here. And once we have that, we're going to put the brow, the frown of the brow is close to the top of the ear for the men. For the women, it's a little lower, closer to the eye itself, not the brow. So the ear is starting with the frown, and then extend that out just a tiny little bit so that it's nice and big. And then the bottom of the nose, that's where we're going to have our smile. So the male ear is going to be much more pronounced. All right, so we have this frown near that eye, and we're going to do a diagonal line, but it doesn't touch the far right. And of course, we'll do the same on the left. It's like what they say in math, what you do on the right side of the equation, you got to do it on the left. Okay, so now here, we're simply going to come out and then back in. So that parenthesis shape is much more defined for the male figure. Same thing here. Out and then come back in. Now we'll do our smile at the bottom of our ear, and it's a little higher, so it feels thicker down here than it does at the top. So more distance between these two spaces down here, less distance at the top. So we're right here and we're smiling. So a little bit more distance here than there. So now that we have that part, we're just going to simply come from the inside here and do that curved shape. And we're going to do the same here, coming from the inside. And that gives us our ear definition. So we really want to have everything pronounced for the male. Now here for the hair, we're going to come a little higher than the hairline. So right about there, we're going to block that in and curve down, curve down. So the male head is going to be bigger. And then now we are coming down and then back toward the hair. So that's a bigger shape than what we've done before. I'm going to lower the hairline a tiny bit. So now that we have that in place, we're going to do our V's and our W's. So they aim toward the left here and they aim towards the right here. Okay, and then the same here. So they're curved in the same direction, V and a W. That's curved in the same direction as how you actually created the sketch. Here we're coming downward and here we're coming down. So towards the left, and then this one comes down and a V towards that very end. You can also go bottom up. So that's going to be filled in a little more. So I'm just going to extend these lines just to give you the idea from the forehead area going up and now from the back of the head coming down. Just fill in a few more of those lines. And then now here we're curving over towards the left. Here, we're going to curve over towards the right. Okay, now let's go on ahead and block in very lightly some shadow. And that shadow is going to be smudged in. So on the outer edges on the right side, and tiny little bit here on the left side. So I'm just using that 7B because it's super smudgy. But of course you can use anything. I'll use a piece of paper to cover my hand so I don't ruin the sketch with all my smudges. Let's go ahead and darken a little bit on the brow, and we will just do a few finishing touches with our shadow. So here on the right, very lightly, we're adding tiny little bit of shadow, smudge that in and up above that eye. And then here at the side of the face, we are giving a little bit of accent on his cheek because he has a pronounced cheekbone. So smudge above that eyebrow, tiny little bit on the left and the right. And now let's do this left side here. So under the brow, right above the eye. Same here on the right, under the brow, right above the eye. And then down the cheek and pull that slightly out so that we're contouring, and bring that a little bit around here for our hairline. Now we're going to go on ahead and let's put in a dash line right underneath and shadow it. So we come wider at the top right here, and now our shadow comes more narrow at the bottom, and smudge that in place. We're going to put 2 angled lines right here where the nose is, and just smudge that a tiny bit. Smudge that nostril on the bottom of the nose. And now here we have a little bit of shadow on the opposite side. Smudge that in place. Now we're just going to do here. And then we will shadow, I'm going to move this up a little tiny bit underneath that chin. So again, I'm using the 7B because it's super smudgy, but my hands get real dirty. So you can make your own choice which one you want to use, but this is our initial sketch. It's not the final sketch, but this helps you to understand how you're going to color. So when you understand how to do it in pencil, it's much easier to do it in pen and colored pencil and watercolor. All right, so that's our male, and you can of course keep going. So we could add more to the hair. We still want to have a little bit of white space, darker at the bottom and darker this way. So adding a little bit more emphasis, and then you go back in and pick your darks and lights for which side you want to feel super dark and which side you want to feel is a light source. So if I just bring these lines a little further, I still have some white spaces. You push harder at the bottom, of course, lighter at the top. So something sort of like that. I'll erase that tiny little bit. And I would say you can smudge in the hair a little bit too. So his hair is combed back, and that is our guy. So we have our details in place, and of course you're just going to practice and do it over and over again. All right, that's the guy. Do many times, practice it 100 billion times, and try to get a guy that you actually like looking at. That's really helpful for anything in your portfolio. That's it for now. I'll see you on the next video.